Good afternoon and welcome to this panel discussion as part of the Convergence Science Network series, Women in Biomed. I'm Catriona Nguyen-Robertson and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a Science Communications Officer for the Convergence Science Network. Before we begin, I would first like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which I'm on, which here that's the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And you're probably tuning in from all across Australia, hopefully. So I encourage you to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which you are. I also want to acknowledge that the Wurundjeri people are the first scientists of this land in their endeavour to understand the land, the sky, and the sea. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that. So over the years, many remarkable women have made revolutionary contributions to the advancement of science, and particularly biomedicine, even if they haven't always been acknowledged. And although the number of women scientists is far greater today than it once was, disparities do continue to exist in gender equality and women empowerment around the world. So in this Convergence Science Network series, we celebrate the successes of women or gender diverse people who have shaped the field of biomedicine through their novel ideas, groundbreaking research, and their determination to address these challenges. So we join women at different stages of their career who will share their experiences to provide an insight into the world of biomedicine and to inspire you, the next generations of scientists or current scientists. Before I introduce our guests, I just want to encourage you to continue the discussion online via Twitter. You can use the handle @Conversi and the hashtag Women in Biomed, and they'll pop up on the screen regularly in case you forget them. So we do encourage you to continue the conversation. All right, so our guests, the main event. We have Associate Professor Rachael Richardson, who is a Senior Research Fellow at the Bionics Institute and also holds an honorary position in the Medical Bionics Department at the University of Melbourne. Welcome, Rachael.
Hi.
And we also have Professor Colette McKay, who is the leader in translational hearing research at the Bionics Institute as well. And Colette also holds honorary professorial fellowships at the University of Melbourne, both in the departments of otolaryngology, I had to practice that one, and medical bionics. So welcome, Colette, as well.
And welcome to all our listeners and watchers.
Yes, hello, everyone. I thought we'd get started with a couple of questions just in case people haven't watched the videos on your research. And just a reminder, if you haven't seen those, you can hear all about the specific details of Colette and Rachael's research in the videos that accompany, the pre-recorded videos that accompany this series. But Colette, I might just start with you. For much of your research career, you've focused on restoring hearing with the cochlear implant, which is, an incredible Australian invention. But I can imagine that it's quite a challenge to think about how you code something like hearing words that comes quite naturally to us so that an implant can give the right kind of signals to the brain. So how do you code acoustic information?
Well, there are two sorts of really important information in speech signals. The first is frequency or pitch information, and that helps us to tell the difference between sounds like ooh and ah. And the second type of really important information is temporal or timing information, or how things change over time. And for example, if you want to hear the difference between papa and baba, then you have to hear how quickly your voice box starts to vibrate after you say the P and the B. So a cochlear implant actually codes both of these types of information. The multiple electrodes within the cochlea elicit different types of pitch percepts, and we can code the timing information into the timing of the electrical pulses that stimulate the hearing nerves.
That's really cool. And it sounds like, well, from your video, it looks like you've made great advances in that field over the course of your career. But now you've moved into a slightly different space or a new space with the ear genie to assess how babies and infants respond to sound so that you can ensure that they're receiving the right hearing aid for them. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that project?
Yes, this is really cool and really enjoyable research. So we work with sleeping newborn infants, and we're using a new type of brain imaging system called functional near-infrared spectroscopy, which just uses light to image how the brain is responding to sound. And so it's really, really important when we actually identify or diagnose a baby with a hearing loss with newborn hearing screening that we can fit a hearing aid to them really quickly. But we need to know whether the hearing aid is actually good enough. Is it giving them access to all the speech sounds? And is it allowing them to distinguish between the different speech sounds? Otherwise, we might need to adjust the hearing aid or give them a cochlear implant. So eGenie actually tests how well a baby, a sleeping baby, that's really cool, a sleeping baby can actually hear the speech sounds and distinguish between them.
Love it. And it's towards that personalization, I guess, of medicine, or in this case, hearing aids.
Right.
Brilliant.
And we're
Thanks.
on a commercialisation pathway to actually make this system and make it available to audiology clinics. Hopefully in the next 3 to 5 years, it'll be in clinics, helping little
Woo.
babies learn.
That's super exciting. And I'll touch on that in a little bit, because, yeah, I am fascinated to hear about the differences when you're researching, for something that's translational and you want to get into the clinic versus, you're researching to publish in academia. So we will get to that. But Rachael, I wanted to give everyone a brief overview of your research as well. So I believe that the main goal of your research is also to develop innovative strategies to improve, I guess, more the precision of neural stimulation with cochlear implants. And I think that you're using light. So light in the ear, how does that work?
That's a great question. The inspiration for this work comes from the fact that we acknowledge that a lot of people do really well with their cochlear implants, but not in every situation. So, for example, you might be able to have a conversation with a teacher or a colleague or your family, but if you're in a very noisy environment, like a restaurant or a classroom, you can't really understand speech that well in these noisy environments, and also maybe listening to music, you don't really get the same kind of appreciation of music as people with normal hearing. And a lot of the reasons behind this is to do with the way that we are interacting with the nerves in the ear. We're using electrodes and using electrical current to activate the nerves. And this is a very efficient way to interact with the nerves in the body. But there is a downside in that there's a lot of current spread. And that means that it's very difficult to encode the full spectrum of sound that we could possibly do. So one idea is to use light, because light can be focused and it is not subject to the same kind of spread. But if you have perhaps done any kind of science at university, you'd realise that nerves don't naturally respond to light. And so what we need to do is to modify the nerves with a single gene, and it comes from some simple organisms, and it helps those organisms respond to light and helps them to move or react to light. But if we can take those genes and put them, or that one gene, and put it into a nerve, we can now make that nerve respond to light, and it's something that it wouldn't normally do. But this idea, this concept, might enable us to interact with nerves with greater precision than we could do before with just electrical current.
That's really cool. Pushing boundaries there. That's really cool how you're getting light to sort of make it more focused. So another one of your goals is to restore hearing or protect hearing by encouraging hair cells to regenerate, or nerves in the cochlea to repair themselves. So how do you coax cells in the cochlea to do this?
The link between these two areas of research is actually around the gene therapy. So again, it's about modifying cells in the cochlea to do something that they won't normally do. So there are two sides to this story. So, for example, you might have a hearing loss that has a genetic component, and you might have a single gene that has a mutation. And it's becoming far more possible these days to correct genetic defects by gene therapy, and it might well be possible one day that you can have your mutation repaired and be able to hear again. But the other side of the story is that you might have a hearing loss that comes from noise exposure just over your lifetime. And there's no particular genetic mutation to fix there. So there are ways, though, that we can possibly repair the damage that has occurred through the noise exposure. That damage might be to your hair cells, it might be to your nerve cells. And we can reintroduce factors into these cells to reprogram them, to use some of these programming that happens during development that makes this cell become possible in the first place. And if we can take these factors, reintroduce them into the cells, we might be able to encourage these cells to develop again, or you sort of bring them back. And the same with the nerve cells. We can reintroduce factors that will help them to survive and to grow.
That's amazing, getting them to revive. Brilliant. And gene therapy, new technologies and things as they advance is so exciting. Thank you. So remember, if you do want to hear more about Colette and Rachael's research, you can watch their videos. Now I want to take you back to the beginning. What was it that inspired you to pursue STEM or science? Colette, maybe we'll start with you. Was it a moment in high school, or what made you go, this is where I'm going to go?
Well, even as a small child, I was really, really passionate about trying to figure out how the world worked. And so when I was at secondary school, I really loved physics, and I decided that I was going to be a physicist, which I guess is a bit unusual. But I had a really brilliant physics teacher at school who really encouraged me and gave me lots of, additional books to read about physics that weren't on the school curriculum. So that's what I did. I went to university and became a physicist and did my PhD in physics. And but then I decided, well, it's a situation where being a woman actually came into it, because at the point of finishing my PhD, I had 2 children and another one on the way. And so I couldn't really do a postdoc in physics. But I also decided that I really wanted to actually do something that helped people. And so I decided to apply my physics skills to the area of hearing research. And so I joined Graham Clark's team at the University of Melbourne to actually start working on the cochlear implant.
And why hearing research? Because you said that you wanted to, apply it to help others, but why did you specifically choose that area?
Well, it wasn't for any particular reason at the time. One of my colleagues in the physics department actually had a student who'd gone to do an audiology postgraduate degree. And I looked it up and I thought, that sounds really interesting, and it looks possible to do if I've got 3 small children to do the course. But from there I got really sucked in, and I actually loved, seeing patients and children, and I really wanted to make the cochlear implant work. So it was all sort of systems go from there.
Yeah, lovely. And Rachael, what about you? Why did you decide to study science?
I think there was never any doubt that I was going to study science. So during high school, it was by far the most interesting subject to me, and I knew I would be working either in science or medicine, or that kind of field. And so I did get into a science course, and I kept just pursuing subjects that interested me the most. And that was typically subjects such as physiology, pathology, biology. So everything to do with the human body, how it works in a normal state and how it works in a disease state. So those were my interests, and I just kept. I didn't have any thoughts that I would be working in hearing research. It certainly wasn't a goal of mine. I just kept following areas that were interesting to me. And then during university, I sort of was lucky enough to work at WeHi and looking at biochemical pathways. Signaling molecules, very, very molecular and sort of very basic science. And I found that really interesting for the potential for drug discovery, sort of looking at new targets that can either stop or promote signaling pathways. And then as a postdoc, the main link between the two was, again, growth factors or factors that influence cells, but at this time it was neurotrophins, so factors that act on nerves rather than cytokines, which are factors that act on blood cells, for example.
Amazing. And both of you bring very different elements to this field of research. Colette, with your background in, I guess, more physics and mathematics, and Rachael with molecular biology. And I guess that kind of was reflected in what you said it was specifically that you're working on in terms of hearing research. I just wanted to ask, what is it like, trying to work towards something that's more clinical and translational, and I think you're both sort of working towards and have patents and things like that, versus what people are probably used to when they're going through the academic system, which is publishing research for academics. Maybe Rachael, we'll start with you. Like, did you find that it was a challenge to switch over? Is it very much the same, or is it very different?
I think it was fascinating to see both sides. So to work on the very basic science level of, here's a new signaling pathway, let's find out all about it. And yeah, so as I mentioned before, that potential for discovery, for new drugs is really high. So that made that really interesting. But then to work in an area that's very specifically working towards therapies for hearing loss, so very much translational. That side was interesting as well, because you feel like you're closer to your target, to the goal of your research coming to fruition and seeing the outcomes. So I'm so glad I've worked in both sides, and I don't know if I honestly could choose which one I prefer. I've enjoyed them both.
We won't make you choose.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rachael. And Colette, what about you?
Well, our latest project, the eGenie project, as I said, is on a commercialisation pathway. And this makes life very different indeed. You have to think about not just how we can make eGenie work better, which is the basic science that we have to do. We have to think of how are we going to get it into clinics? How are we going to get clinicians to want to use it? How are we going to actually make the device and sell it to people so that we can actually make a business plan to do it? And so all of a sudden my life is full of meetings to work out market analysis and business plans. That's something at my age I'm learning a lot of very new things. But throughout my life, I've always, as an audiologist, a clinical audiologist, but also a scientist, I've worked with implant companies quite a lot, and I've also worked with patients quite a lot. So it's really useful to have those sorts of multidisciplinary inputs into your research, because you know what patients want and what implant companies want, and you can work directly towards them. So,
yeah, I guess
all
getting that feedback.
Slow down your publication rate, but they actually increase your impact. So And I personally think impact is more important than publication numbers.
Yeah, certainly once you've got the funding. Yeah, that whole publish or perish system. I mean, that's a wormhole for another time. But yeah, that's really interesting to hear your insights coming from both. I wanted to ask, and remember, everyone who's tuning in, you are also welcome to ask questions. You can just type them in the comments, and I'll relay them. But Colette, you kind of alluded to this when you were telling us about why you moved into hearing research. But I wanted to ask both of you, what's it like working in a field that's potentially a little bit more male dominated? I think, this particularly physics, for example, and Colette, you said that you had children and that was kind of a barrier to you pursuing more physics research without going across to audiology. So have either of you felt that there have been particular barriers that you've had to overcome as women in science? Maybe Rachel, we'll start with you.
I have to say, I would find it hard to disentangle the difference between facing barriers based on a gender, male or female, versus just variations in people's personalities. So I
Plus
have
light.
sort of I have my comfort zones and areas where I feel less comfortable, and who knows what is causing particular barriers or challenges. But I personally prefer not to focus on challenges and things that seem like barriers, and prefer to see. I'm quite an optimistic person. I like to see opportunities. I like to see, well, if I were to look at a situation, what can I make? How can I make the best of this situation, this opportunity? So, yeah, it's very hard. I don't really think of the challenges as much, but I am the kind of person though that tends to. I like challenges as well, and I sometimes wonder whether I make life difficult by choosing very challenging things to do.
That's that's a lovely way to think about it, like opportunities for growth and things, and I guess not separating them. And yeah, someone's just commented that gender discrimination puts us all in a worse place. So yeah, like to not think about it is a good way forward. Colette, what about yourself? Or maybe you want to talk about, when you had children.
Yeah, so when I was a physics person, there was a lot of assumptions made about me being one of only two women in physics at the time doing postgraduate physics. I was very lucky that I did have another female actually doing physics with me. But there were a lot of assumptions made. I remember meeting a lecturer in the lift, just after we'd done an exam, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh, I didn't know you were any good." And another time when I was doing summer work at a Defence Standard Laboratories, some pipe-smoking scientist sat me down and said, "Now, if you thought about doing nursing, that's a better career for you than physics." So I hope that the world is a lot better than that now. But I would also point out that there's a lot of barriers to women getting promotion, especially within their own department, from going from A to B. It's very hard to get the recognition that you actually deserve. And I found that very distressing, actually. And I got around that by actually going overseas to get a professorship. I was able to sail into high-level professor jobs overseas where I couldn't get actual promotion within my own department. And so I would advise people that if you really want to, scale up the scale of your career, do think about changing organisations when you want to change your level. It actually helps a lot.
I guess, again, that's an opportunity for growth, like, going overseas or going to a different organization. But I guess it's also a bit of a shame that, we feel like we might have to, go away from where we are. When you did make that move, Colette, so you went to the UK, was that a difficult sort of move? Because at the time, I'm guessing you already had a family. So was it difficult to sort of uproot your life and take your work over to the UK and then you brought it back?
Yes, it wouldn't have been able to do it if my children were younger, but they were at the stage where they'd all flown the coop, and so I was actually free to be able to do that. But I wouldn't have been able to do it if I was in the younger state. And also, even just changing cities within a country is sometimes difficult for women because you have to move your whole family. Your husband might have a different job, so it actually is quite difficult to actually do that.
Yeah. I can imagine that it's quite difficult to sort of, I guess, uproot your life in a way. A question has just come in from Haida. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. So Haida is someone who's passionate about the field of biomedical engineering, but is unsure about, whether the field is more about or where they want to go, whether it be like medical equipment and the design of that, or something else. So how do you sort of go about settling on something or choosing which is best? Colette, do you want to have a go at that first?
So I would suggest just try everything. Don't limit yourself to just trying one thing and sticking to it. Just find what you're passionate about. You won't be able to know until you try it. So do internships in various places. Actually get experience doing different types of things, and you'll find out what you really love doing. And the other thing is try and be multidisciplinary. It really increases your chances in life if you actually have a lot more skills in different disciplines.
Yeah, and both of you clearly have lots of skills and lots of fields there, so that's awesome. Rachael, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I would have said exactly the same thing. If you can try it out, that would be great. Internships, because they give you contacts within fields, and those contacts have contacts and so on. So, I myself had a summer studentship at Wehi, and that really sort of put my foot in the door. I had people I knew, and that led to my honours project and my PhD as well. So, it gives you a feel for an area and for all the techniques involved and just meeting people.
Yeah, meeting people is always good, and putting your foot in to test all the different waters. Thank you both for that. So, Colette, you said as part of your answer, find something that you're passionate about. I just wanted to ask both of you, what is it that you love most about what you do? Whether it be like in general or on a day-to-day basis, like what is it that makes you love going, yeah, I'm loving my job? Colette?
For me, it's the feeling that you're actually doing something for people, that you're having an impact. Even in doing the cochlear implant research, I work directly with the people who have actually received the cochlear implant, and just the interaction with them, where they love you because you're doing research that actually helps them. It's quite different to other areas of medicine where you're working with people who are maybe quite ill. So I really love the idea of actually having an impact out there in the world.
Yeah, you're really making your mark there. And Rachael?
I think what I like a lot about science is the challenge and diversity of the things that you will do. I have actually had quite an unusual career pathway in that I haven't really, I didn't go overseas after my PhD. I got a job at the Bionics Institute, as it was known at the time, and I'm still there. It's known as the Bionics Institute now. And I thought about this a little while ago. I thought, why am I still there? And it's because my job has changed. It's constantly evolving. I'm constantly learning new things, and always improving myself. And yeah, it's just interesting. You know, there's none of that job boredom that you might get in other areas. So that's what I love about science. It's fascinating. It's great.
Yeah. Also, I'm just really appreciating these comments coming in from Robert and John. Keep it up. But we have another question that I'm going to sort of tweak a little bit. So thinking about networking and communicating to people and thinking about, okay, who do I need to communicate with? Who do I need to meet? So in terms of, networking, how do you go about choosing the right people? And I also want to tack on to the end of that as a second part of the question, how do you find people to be mentors and what do you look for in a mentor? Rachael, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think trying to come up with people that you would like to work with and collaborate with. You're going to go through some potential collaborations that you set up and they don't go anywhere, and I think that's just part of the process. You give it a try and you find that you're not getting that connection, or you're not quite getting out of them what you had hoped, and I think it's worth identifying that early and realizing, okay, that's a dead end, and that's fine. But I think you keep trying. That's why we attend conferences. We meet people. We talk to people, and we come up with great ideas. But it's about following through, I suppose. After the conference, when you get home, again, this is when we used to travel to conferences, and you get home and taking action, seeing how it goes. And then, maybe some percentage of the time it's going to be really successful. And those are the ones that obviously carry through.
And a lot of our conferences right now, I guess, are virtual. So it's like instead of a handshake, it's like a hello. This is how we're greeting and meeting everyone. Colette, so again, the question was, or the two questions were, how do you go about choosing the right people to network with, I guess, and what do you look for in a mentor when you're meeting people?
So first of all, networking, face-to-face conferences are really crucial. You've got to go to these conferences and you've got to talk to as many people as you can. Don't just go to present your talk, or, actually go and have lunch with people, talk about their research. Find someone who actually has complementary skills to you, where if you put your skills and their skills together, you could have 1 + 1 = 5. And that way collaborations start. So it's really important to have those networks and to also actually have as many collaborations as you can to actually become more known in the field, for example. And as for mentors, I really didn't have a mentor when I was going through my career. And I could have really done with one, I think. I did have role models, though. So when I was learning how to be a leader, which you never learn in undergraduate or postgraduate things, you never learn how to be a leader. I was very carefully watching people that I thought were good leaders and bad leaders, and working out what they did that was really good or really bad. And there's also some really great books about that too. And even in my old state, I'm getting quite old now, I actually have a mentor now, a really nice person, who, when I was feeling like I had imposter syndrome, which everyone who's human has imposter syndrome, I think, said to me, no, you didn't have lucky breaks during your career that helped your career. That's not how it was. You had your career because you were good at it. And you really need people to tell you that, to say, no, you got where you are because you were actually good at it, not because you had a lucky break or, something happened one day and it was just, something that was lucky. So you have to have a lot of confidence in yourself. And I think that's one of the things that mentors can actually do. My mentor did it for me, and I think that if you're a mentor, that's one of the main things you've got to tell people is that, you can do it. You've got what it takes. Just go and, take the bull by the horns. Don't sit back and wait for it to happen to you. Go and make it happen.
Yeah, you certainly need people like mentors and supporters who are going to, be cheerleaders for you the whole way. So you actually touched on imposter syndrome, Colette, which is something that I wanted to ask about. So as you said, everyone kind of has imposter syndrome, and it kind of goes up and down. So Rachel, did you want to talk about your experience with imposter syndrome? And I know that you've said that you don't really see things as challenges, but is that ever something that you have to tackle?
Oh yes, absolutely, and I've certainly been there, and I think sometimes this comes about, especially as a student or a younger, more junior postdoc, for example, and you might be listening to presentations given by professors who've been in the area for 20, 30 years, and they're presenting this amazing work, and you're thinking, wow, you're looking at this amazing story and you think, oh, gee, my work's not going that well. And you might forget that they're summarizing 20, 30 years of work and showing all the highlights and not showing all the bits in between, all those bits that went wrong. And sometimes I think we should talk more openly, particularly within our labs and institutes. Celebrate your wins and successes, but talk about the failures as well, so everyone can see that you're human and that your science didn't work well. It might not work well for a year, 2 years. You might be sort of in a bit of a slump, but there's always sort of like a roller coaster. It can certainly then do really well for another couple of years. So I think that's one source of the imposter syndrome is you're only seeing the highlights. It's like social media. You're not seeing the bad stuff. You're only seeing the good stuff. And you think, oh, gee.
Yeah. Everyone puts on a face.
That's not happening to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if there's a little bit more openness, honesty, and showing wins and losses and failures and successes, and just that would let everybody open up and say, oh, yeah, that didn't work for me either.
Absolutely. I feel like there are a lot of comments here, like both from yourselves and in the comments, like calling, I guess, for more systemic change, like more open communication, celebrating the highlights and the lowlights, and I guess making sure that women don't have to go overseas to be recognized, and making sure that men have to take care of children too. I think there's great conversation coming out of this. Speaking of going overseas, Colette, did you feel that traveling and going to another place helped you, one, connect with the world? It's a big world, but also learning new ideas and coming up with new innovative ways of looking at problems?
Yes, definitely. All the way through my career, I've been learning new tricks based upon my collaborations with people. My first collaboration within the department was with an engineer, so I learned a lot about engineering because I was a theoretical physicist. I was not an engineer. And then my overseas networks started when I went to a conference, and I had a I linked up with a person who was the guru of psychophysics, which is the science of perception and how to measure what people are actually perceiving or hearing. And we did a lot of things together. I knew a lot about cochlear implants, and he knew a lot about psychophysics. And so we married each other up, not literally, of course. And we've been collaborators now for 20, 30 years. And so I think the clue is that when you go to these conferences, find people who have complementary skills to you, skills that you might need to actually achieve, to actually get to your aim of actually helping people with whatever, the translation you want to go to. And that way you build a team and you actually learn an awful lot, and you get a lot further faster.
Yeah, we're definitely, if you're working in a team, you're going to achieve much more, and that's the great thing about, I guess, convergence in science. Rachael, you're nodding a lot. Like, have you gone overseas to conferences and to check out other institutes overseas and things, and taken back some great new ideas?
I think what was running through my mind was the fact that I have stayed in Australia. I didn't do the postdoc overseas, and there's no doubt in my mind that I've had to work harder to generate those international collaborations because of that. So that was my decision, and that's fine. So after my PhD, I decided to get a job in Melbourne and get a bit more experience, and probably with the thought that I might do a postdoc overseas a bit later, but it never eventuated. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, I've definitely had to work a little bit harder to get those collaborations and network going. So certainly the conferences have been my main source of networking.
Awesome. So that was actually a rephrased question from Haida again. And Haida has another question. Maybe I'll throw it to Colette. So you've been in the field of biomedical engineering for a while. Have you seen it sort of change and progress in terms of diversity in the time that you've been in the field? And do you think it's going to be different, I guess, for people who are coming through now?
Yes, it is improving, I think. I think it's a lot more common now for girls to do engineering and succeed in engineering. They're still rather rare compared to the male engineers. But I think these days it's a lot more, acceptable to the workplace to have female engineers, put it that way. There's not overt discrimination. There is still unconscious discrimination, though. And there's still the difficulty of actually telling young girls at high school stage, that they can actually do these sorts of subjects, and they can actually succeed at them, and they're interesting, and they can help people by doing engineering. I think a lot more needs to be done at the school level for that.
Yeah, you're right. We're still definitely fighting the unconscious bias. Rachael, have you sort of seen anything change?
It's definitely never been a better time for girls and women to enter the field of bioengineering or science. And it comes down to maintaining the conversations about equality. And if we keep the conversation going, then this unconscious bias goes away because it becomes conscious. And then once it's conscious, you can address it more easily, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We need to know what the problems are so that we can actually address them.
But there's no doubt that we all have been guilty of unconscious bias. And that's the nature of it. We're not aware of it. But the more we have conversations around it, whether it's women in science or anything, then the better it all becomes.
Yeah. We have a great question now, more about the future of the field, I guess. So thinking about either the field of biomedical engineering in general or hearing research in particular, is there anything you're excited about for the next 5 years, or can you see the field like really growing in a particular direction in the next 5 years? Maybe Colette, will start with you.
I think in general, the field of biomedical engineering is really expanding. It's a really great place to be if you're a young person coming into the field, because we're getting into a technology, digital sort of age where all sorts of bionics devices that are being developed and made to help people with all sorts of different problems, not just hearing loss. So I think it's a really great field to be in. I would really encourage you to do that if you're thinking of it.
Colette's wisdom, words of advice, like join this field. Rachael, is there anything that you're excited about to see in the field in the next 5 years?
Yes, I completely agree. We're finding more and more ways that we can listen to the nervous system and interact and modulate the nervous system, and it's going well beyond the cochlea and hearing. It's for all sorts of possible problems or diseases and so on. That it's a very exciting time. And likewise for the area of gene therapy, with so many preclinical and clinical trials going on, using viral vectors to introduce genes into the body is becoming more and more acceptable, and it's proving to be safe and effective, and it's going to be really exciting to see what we can do to reverse hearing loss, vision loss, you name it. It's going to be, and also sort of other areas, as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be a particular genetic mutation. We can still introduce genes that will counteract a problem.
Yeah, certainly the more sciences that come together, the more and more exciting science gets. Yeah, thanks. Lots of things to look forward to, I guess, in the field of biomedical engineering. In terms of juggling a work-life balance in your current positions, do you feel like you have a work-life balance? Can you sort of juggle everything in your life? Do you have time for hobbies and life outside of work? Rachael, would you like to start?
Look, I must say I'm extremely fortunate to have a network of people around me who help me look after the children, and I can work. I find the work-life balance extremely rewarding at the moment, because I can, and it's a matter of being present in one or the other. So if you're at work, and you shouldn't feel guilty that you're not spending time with the children. And if you're spending time with the family, the children, you should be present and there and not feeling guilty that you're not doing work. And so have that balance, enjoy it. But like I said, I'm really fortunate and lucky to have such a network, and I understand a lot of people don't have that, and it can be a lot more difficult. So do what you can and don't feel guilty.
Don't feel guilty for taking time off. Colette, is there anything that you would like to add?
There is a lot of pressure on both genders to actually be super achievers and to do more work than you should in terms of keeping a work-life balance. And that's the way academia works, and it's not really very good for people. At the peak of my jobs in the UK, I was probably working 60 hours a week, which isn't very good. It's not good for your mental health. It's not good for your physical health. It's not good for your family if you have a young family. And unlike Rachael, my my family is grandchildren now, and I'd like to get time to actually, have my grandchildren around. With the COVID pandemic, it's really, I think, destroyed a lot of people's work-life balance. Academic people are mostly all working at home, and it's very difficult to actually separate your home life and your work when you're sitting in front of your computer at home trying to work. So I'd encourage everyone who's in lockdown in this pandemic, if you're in lockdown, to go for a big long walk at lunchtime. Make sure you turn your computer off and don't sit there all day in front of your computer on Zoom calls.
Don't say that as we're encouraging people to be sitting here listening to this webinar.
Go for a walk after this webinar.
In 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes.
Thanks for that. Another question from Haida. How do you think that the opening for positions in the field of biomedical and engineering will change in terms of the workforce, given that the field is getting more recognition and also given how potentially COVID-19 has impacted the field? Colette, would you like to start?
I don't think it has impacted the job opportunities at all. I think it's an area where there's growing job opportunities, and the pandemic's going to finish. It's not going to be here forever. I think the future's rosy in spite of all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. And Rachael, do you have anything to add on how you think things are going to change in terms of the workforce in biomedical engineering?
I think there's growing, not pressure, but impetus for companies and academic areas to strive for that 50-50 balance between male and female, and that's going to be beneficial for students coming through, looking for jobs. And but it's not about just getting that balance just to look good on books or numbers. And I think they're going to recognise the benefits that they'll get from having a diverse workforce.
Brilliant. And I might just ask one final question. What inspirational message or what sort of word of advice would you give to younger people to inspire them to pursue biomedical engineering or biomedicine in general? Colette, would you like to give your words of wisdom first?
Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it or suggest that you should try nursing. Not that nursing is not a good career. It's a fabulous career. But if your passion is science, go for it, because that's where you should be, in science.
And isn't the world a better place because you didn't go into nursing just because someone said that? Rachael?
I guess the advice is to take action. If you think it, then you can do it. So look out for those opportunities and keep doing the things you enjoy. And, I try to instill a sense of wonder and fascination in my kids about science. And I know for a fact right now there's some science going on in the house right now with some celery being put into some food dye, I think. And so, hopefully they're enjoying that too.
I did kind of want to end on that positive note of an inspirational message, but we have time for one more question that's just come in from Katie. Are there any choices that you've made in your career that you regret? Is there anything that you wish that you've done or not done? Rachael?
Oh, I think your decisions are made, and it's probably best to look forward rather than to look back and regret your decisions. I took a lot of time off with the kids, and that probably was quite difficult for me to get back, and it took years and years, in fact, for me to really feel like I was back in control. But I don't regret that. That was a decision, and that's what happened.
Hashtag no regrets. Thanks. And Colette, is there anything that you regret?
I don't really have anything to regret. I think what Rachael said is right. You have to always go forward, not backwards. And yeah, it's the only thing that I would regret is not learning earlier how to step forward and not worry about what people are, not to worry about the lack of recognition, but to go and make your own recognition. You got to, take the initiative, go forward, just do it.
Thank you both for those words of wisdom. And that was a positive note to end on. But before we finish up, I just wanted to say a big thank you to the sponsors of the Convergence Science Network, whose generous support makes this and other events like this possible. We do have a range of sponsors covering academia, research, industry, and hospitals. And yeah, their support really does make it possible for us to engage with you, with the public, and share everything that's going on in biomedical research at no cost. So thanks to them. And thank you to all of you who are watching online. Thank you very much for the comment. I'm pointing like you can see what I'm looking at, but thank you for your comments, for your questions. I think there are a lot of really great points made there in the comments, which I think will be visible in the recording as well. We would love to hear from you. If you could please spare 2 minutes to complete a short anonymous survey. I believe that the link is somewhere there below. Your feedback is honestly really important to us, and it ensures that we can continue to deliver something that's worthwhile and something that you want and is informative for the entire community. So thank you. And a big thank you to Colette and Rachael. I think it's been great. I've learned a lot about hearing research and the field of biomedical engineering, as well as I think there's really been a great discussion based on everything that you've said in terms of clearly the things that need to potentially change in the field, but also a lot of, positive things about, how we should be looking forward and things like that. So thank you both so much for your time and for sharing your experience and your journey with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So to everyone watching, thanks for coming along. You can also subscribe to the CSN video channel just by clicking the subscribe button, which is somewhere there below next to you. It also should appear, I think, below this live stream video, but there's really lots of great content and a super archive of lots of videos. Rachael was talking a lot about gene editing, not gene editing, sorry, but gene therapy. And we've got videos on both of those things. So there's lots of great content there as well. Thanks so much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your days. Thanks for coming along. Bye.